I kind of want to watch this, chat.
It's November 10th, 2008.
xQc
Barack Obama
now.
just won an election, and he travels to the White House to meet with the outgoing president, George Bush. In that meeting, Bush told Obama about a top-secret weapon that the U.S. military had been developing with Israel since 2005, codenamed Project Olympic Games. This weapon was intended to hit one of Iran's most fortified nuclear facilities, buried deep underground, where centrifuges spin uranium to enrich it for use as energy or, with enough spinning, to be used in a nuclear weapon. But this secret weapon wasn't a missile, they weren't planning an airstrike. Instead, it was a computer file, less than a megabyte in size. 150,000 lines of pristine code. This is the weapon that the president had to tell Obama about. This little file had been planted in Iran, where it spread throughout the whole country. But it didn't do anything. It lay dormant until it found its way onto a flash drive that was then plugged in at this underground nuclear facility. And then it spread, finding its way to its final target, this one machine. And then the weapon started working, quietly reprogramming the software to very subtly sabotage these delicate spinning centrifuges, opening a valve to change the pressure, telling the centrifuge to spin a bit faster or a bit slower, all while telling the technicians that everything was working properly. Over time, these subtle manipulations destroyed these centrifuges. This was one of several weapons that the US had planted in Iran using sophisticated computer code.
Real?
Now, if a war broke out with Iran, the US could turn off their power, could turn off their military defense systems, making it so they couldn't shoot down planes. They could turn off their command and control systems so they couldn't talk to each other during the fight. This was a real war plan executed by thousands of American military personnel, hundreds of millions of dollars in a cyber operation that would, quote, prepare the battlefield by weakening Iran's ability to fight, all of it using code. The code that sabotaged the nuclear facility was eventually discovered and named after some of the elements that were inside of these many lines of code, .stub or MRXnet. They called it Stuxnet. Now, this weapon did slow down Iran's progress at first, but it didn't stop them. But what this did do was showcase a new style of war. The use of quiet weapons in the form of a tiny text file that could self-replicate and wreak actual physical damage on an enemy.
Chat.
We call this cyber warfare, and it has become a
Chat, whatever people that use like the war computers and shit like that, chat, why don't they have something, chat, that reformats the computer every like whatever amount of weeks or days, whatever? Like, technically, shouldn't they just keep reformatting?
fixture of modern conflict.
Why not?
Let me show you how it works.
We're moving into a new era. People are actually getting killed.
Dismantle our communication
With the
system.
click of a button, you can bring down nations to their knees.
Before Stuxnet, most cyber warfare was pretty basic. Like in the 80s, you had this
Is it an
situation
ad?
where an East German hacker broke into some military computers in the
Oh,
US
skip on the ad
looking
time.
for secrets for the FSB, which was like the Soviet spy agency. Or more recently, like in 2007, where Russian hackers attacked a bunch of Estonian websites in the financial, government, and media sectors, shutting them down as retaliation against Estonia deciding to relocate a Soviet monument. These were cyber attacks, but they were pretty weak and unsophisticated, especially compared to what was soon to come. So we live in a weird time. Our information ended up selling their secrets to the US government in the name of making cyber weapons is the next part of the story.
It was an ad, Andy.
But first, a quick word on software. This thing that runs our modern life, that is mostly invisible, but that is endlessly important. That ensures that you have electricity and that you can access your bank account and do your job.
Is this an
All
ad?
of this is made possible because of something that looks very simple.
No, it's not.
Lines and lines of code. They're just basically lists of instructions on how a system should run, what it should do in every circumstance, and who has access to what. But because more and more of the world is run on software, and software contains sensitive information like your social security number or bank account number, whatever, developers build their software like a castle.
For years.
Yeah, like the brick by brick thing we saw the other day.
So this is our software castle. It has walls and locked doors that only authorized users are allowed to get into. But inevitably, because it's a big complex castle, the builders of this castle, on accident, left little holes, little vulnerabilities, weak spots, secret doors, that if an intruder could find, would allow them to get in, where they can steal things, or even take control of parts of the castle. They can lock the owner out, and only give them access in exchange for money. Or they could just leave little time bombs that will blow up later. Almost all software has some kind of vulnerability that would allow a hacker to get in.
I mean, watching it that was
But
different.
the worst kind, arguably, and the nightmare scenario for software developers is the 0 day.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen something about this for sure.
It's called a 0 day exploit because by the time the intruder gets...
Okay, chat guys, I'm only gonna skip the 0 day because we know what a 0 day is. A 0 day is when you're the first to find something. I mean, you just make it faster.
Don't
people
you
know.
just hate it when your cat wakes you up?
Yo,
like...
shut up, bitch. 0 day is whenever you're like the first to find something and nobody else has it, right? And then it's like you can be the first to use the vulnerability.
Box.
So by the end of
Nobody
the early
knows that
2000s,
it exists, yeah.
after Stuxnet, it truly was the beginning of a new era of cyber warfare.
Now you want to watch the entire video about
In
it.
2012, Chinese-backed hackers broke into the computer systems of over a dozen oil and gas companies. There was an investigation, and the FBI and Homeland Security concluded that the attack wasn't to steal anything or even to sabotage the infrastructure, but rather to, quote, gain strategic access for future operations, meaning to gain leverage over the United States. Investigators said that this was the first time that they had seen anything like this. That same year, an Iranian hacker group attacked Saudi Arabia, Iran's enemy, using a cyber weapon that is kind of like a digital bomb. It was a virus called Shamoon, and it got into the computers of Saudi Arabia's state oil company, wiping their hard drives clean. This thing spread across the company's networks, ultimately wiping data from tens of thousands of computers and rendering them totally inoperable. A huge blow to the company. In 2015, a huge cyber attack occurred when the Russian hacking group Sandworm shut off the power to 250,000 Ukrainians by gaining control of the computers that ran the power stations. This is actual footage of them remotely controlling these stations' computers.
They used a piece of automated malware to do that, which is a sign that they will probably want to use that again. That looked like a kind of practice rounds to develop a capability that they wanted to have to use globally.
This set a new precedent. People theoretically knew that cyber weapons could be used against electricity grids, which is like the lifeblood of our economy and society, but it hadn't actually happened until this 2015 attack. These are just a few examples, but they're examples that show how cyber weapons became employed in a war context between countries. It wasn't just hackers trying to steal money. It was countries trying to hurt their enemy, trying to demonstrate their capabilities, to deter their enemy, to let them know that they have power over them. A tool of war, of national power. And indeed, in 2010, the US acknowledged this very overtly by adding the US Cyber Command as a new department to the military. Cyber war was here, and it was here to stay.
That logo kind of
Today,
sucks,
we
no?
face threats that have increased in sophistication, magnitude, intensity, volume, and velocity.
But here's what's crazy is that these aren't weapons. These aren't like missiles where a country has a monopoly over buying and using them. Cyber weapons are just bits of code. They're text files that are really small and easy to transfer around. So what happens when a cyber weapon developed by a military gets into the hands of everyone and they can use it however they want? Well, that's exactly what happened in 2016.
The DNC has called the FBI after a deleting attempt to hack into voter databases.
During the 2016 presidential election, the US was hit with a barrage of cyber attacks. This included the hacking of emails of the Democratic Party, a misinformation campaign on social media, and even an attempted hack of voter registration databases in several states. American intelligence agencies came together, they investigated, and they concluded that this was Russia. It was Russian hackers that were supported and directed by the Russian government itself. And the goal was to sabotage the American electoral system.
The Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC.
This was like a frenzy here in the United States. Like, everyone was talking about it. It was a huge deal. But in the middle of all of this, a post quietly appears on GitHub.
Right.
From a user by the name of the Shadow Brokers. This was a few months before the election. It was a tense time for a lot of reasons. They claimed that they had super powerful cyber weapons from the American government's most elite cyber war group, the ones who created Stuxnet, and that they would sell these hacking weapons to the highest bidder. They would take their bids in Bitcoin. They released a few pretty impressive samples that actually looked pretty legitimate. They released an encrypted file that said contained more hacking weapons, but you needed the password for it. But they held onto it, posting every once in a while with a trickle of more information and, honestly, a lot of like bizarre rants on American hypocrisy and broken English that felt kind of intentional and caricatured. They didn't end up getting very much money, and it all looked fairly ridiculous. But then, out of nowhere, came this post.
Last week, the shadow brokers be trying to help peoples. This week, the shadow brokers be thinking, F peoples.
They were getting pretty spicy, and indeed, they released this password, this weird password that they said was the password to that encrypted file that they had posted earlier. And when you put that password in the encrypted file, you discover that it is exactly what the shadow brokers said it was. 67 files that comprised some of the most sophisticated and dangerous cyber weapons that the NSA had ever created.
Which are now
And
useless.
among them, the most powerful of the bunch, a tool called Eternal Blue, which allowed hackers to break into and control the Windows operating system, which is what most computers in this world use. Eternal Blue was like an open door. Back to our castle analogy, this was like a door into millions of castles, and the power to spy inside of the castle, to unlock any door, to steal the contents of the castle, to disrupt and break and destroy whatever you wanted inside of the castle, to lock people out of their own castle. Yeah, I mean, this was like a sophisticated military weapon that had just been duplicated and sent to anyone who had an internet connection. And what it meant
can they
was
just
that
patch it?
the shadow brokers, in all of their like caricatured broken English, were actually legit. They had hacked in to our national security agency, our secret spy agency, and stolen the cyber weapons and sent them out to the entire world. Not just to other governments, but to anyone. So who are these shadow brokers and how did they do this? The answer, and the kind of scary thing about cyber war, is that we don't totally know. Experts think that Russia did this to send a very clear signal to the NSA and to the United States at large that, hey, we can do this. We have the power to break into your biggest secrets, and we will release them if we want to. So now, after 2016, we enter a new era of cyber warfare. Stuxnet was a big turning point. The Shadow Brokers and Eternal Blue is our next turning point. From here on, you see a new genre of more sophisticated, more powerful cyber attacks. Barely a month after the NSA's secret weapons leak out by the Shadow Brokers, a North Korean-linked hacking group uses them to deploy a virus that spreads to nearly every country on Earth within hours, locking up hundreds of thousands of computers, making them unusable, which halted hospital equipment, police departments, governments, and railways in over 150 countries. You're sitting there on your computer and this pops up, saying that your files are locked and that you can get them back, but, quote,
You have not so enough time.
close quote, and that, quote,
You need to pay $300 worth of Bitcoin to do so.
Malicious software has been taking computers hostage in an unprecedented worldwide outbreak.
this is called ransomware. Basically, you ransom the computer files and you have to pay. This happened in a matter of hours. It was only stopped because a 22-year-old researcher accidentally activated a kill switch baked into the code. So the bigger crisis was kind of diverted. But even still, in just that few hours, as WannaCry was spreading to 150 countries, it caused hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars of damage and economic loss. This showed us how powerful these NSA weapons could be in the hands of bad actors. And we learned this lesson once again when these same weapons were used by the masters of cyber warfare, Russia.
It's the single biggest attack on record.
It was June of 2017, the night
I
before
remember.
Ukraine's Constitution Day, when the Russian hacking group Sandworm deployed an attack that was similar to their 2015 electrical grid attack. But this time, they had the NSA weapons in their hands, so it was a whole new level. This one was called NotPetya. This thing was potent. It spread very quickly, and soon Ukrainians were seeing this scary screen on their computer that literally started with, quote,
Oops, your important files are encrypted. Perhaps you are busy looking for ways to recover your files, but don't waste your time. Nobody can recover your files without our decryption service.
It looked like another ransomware attack, saying that you have to pay $300 worth of Bitcoin in order to get your files released. But meanwhile, it was spreading super fast and wiping everything out in its path. It took down Kiev's mass transit system, airports, hospitals, and it rapidly spread through government agencies. Gas stations and power grids went down, credit cards stopped working, and it shut down almost every ATM machine in the capital.
That's
One person
kind of
who was caught in the
insane.
middle of the cyber attack described it as, life went very fast from what's new on Facebook to, do I have enough money to buy food for tomorrow? And it's a moment like this that we can really grasp just how fundamental this infrastructure is to our lives. And in this case, there was no kill switch. It was so viral that it spread beyond its target of Ukraine into other parts of the region, hitting the systems of a bunch of companies like FedEx or the shipping company Maersk. And soon tens of thousands of trucks were stuck for days with no computers to guide them. I mean, that's a lot of trucks. And many, many others. It affected tons of companies and agencies and systems, all because of this one virus. Unlike a missile or an invasion, cyber can hide behind this hackery looking screen. This doesn't look like a state entity. This looks like a hacker doing a ransomware attack so they can make some money in Bitcoin. But that's not what this was. This was a coordinated, sophisticated attack by the Russian government using an American cyber weapon to make it more viral that caused an estimated $10 billion in economic loss and damages. And in the process, really blurring the lines of the rules of war, where usually like, you know what a country did to you and you know how you're supposed to respond, and all of that creates this nice balance of like deterrence. That's kind of the lifeblood of stability in our global order. When you've got these shadowy...
It's kind of tough to blame Russia when they're using your shit that you built. If you build something that's so poorly secured, it leaks onto something, somebody else can use it, it's kind of your fault.
Like deniable attacks, it makes it way harder to know how to respond, to whom to respond, and like what's proportional. It just changes our view.
If some father doesn't lock his gun properly and his child uses it, you guys are going to blame the father 99% of the time, and you're going to make a big song and dance about it. These guys make a software that's insecure, somebody else steals it and uses it, and you're going to blame them for it? Oh, I don't know. I don't think that's a very good argument.
Which is why regimes like North Korea or Russia have leaned very heavily on this type of engagement, because as they become more isolated and as their military becomes less effective, this is a way for them to stay relevant, for their enemies to continue to fear them.
Guys, cyber... if it's not Russia, it's going to be somebody else. Like, what? I'm confused.
Is an actual weapon of war now. But let me just say something that is probably not obvious and might be surprising to you here at the end of the video, which is that the biggest threat in the future, the thing that's going to be the biggest part of cyber warfare, isn't going to be these big splashy like shut down the electrical grid, doomsday scenario situations. Those might happen. Those are real threats. We need to prepare for them. But like any weapon of war, cyber is turning into a weapon that is being deployed subtly, that countries will use to get into the minds of their enemies. Like right now, we could be pretty certain that Russia and China have quietly infiltrated parts of our infrastructure systems. They haven't done anything with that, but they're probably there. At least that's what a lot of analysts and experts think. And that we have probably done the same to them. And that we're all just sitting there with our little time bombs put into our enemy's castle in case we need to use them. And we want our enemy to kind of know that we're there. There's this list that I've been looking at of all of the cyber attacks. CSIS, the think tank that I used to work at, documents these. And I was surprised that I hadn't heard of almost any of them because they're small, but they're frequent. To me, this is the future of cyber warfare. It's not Stuxnet and WannaCry. It's these death by 1,000 pokes, psychological warfare, revealing to your enemy that you have capabilities to infiltrate their systems. And in that sense,
Interesting.
cyber warfare starts to look a lot like nuclear deterrence, like a shadowy, hidden submarine with nuclear weapons floating through the ocean somewhere, capable of hitting your enemy. And your enemy knows that. They don't know where it is, but they know that it's there. And any calculation that they make on conflict takes into account that that weapon is there and could be used at any point. This is the weird paradox of war and peace and deterrence. That one of the forces that has kept our world stable and rid of great powers conflict since 1945 has been the fact that we have very powerful weapons all pointed at each other, and therefore we don't use them. Cyber weapons are going the way of that kind.
Chat, go, chat. On full screen, click on this, chat, and look what you got. Jesus, bro, look, chat, it's right there. Technically, they could flip the switch and fucking push an update, right? And we're all GG.
Kind of deterrence. Hopefully, they'll never be used in the way that
if their computers are hijacked and they push an update that has malware, I mean, we're all absolutely GG.
Fear that the sort of doomsday scenario of like they shut down the electrical grid and they do a full-scale attack. Yes, there will continue to be these moments where viruses spread, and to avoid those, just update your damn software. I hate it as much as you do, but like two-factor authentication, we gotta do it. All this stuff.
Who is we? Who is we? Dude. You're missing the point. Some government official probably has some child that uses fucking Valorant or anything with Vanguard somewhere in the house, somewhere out there. It only takes a couple.
It's there for a reason, because we live in a new world, and we should be prepared for that world. As for the war and the geopolitics of it all, I'm going to keep an eye on it, because one thing in all of this is certain. Cyber is here to stay. It is something we have to think about and understand if we're going to understand the future of war.
Interesting. I enjoyed the video, it was pretty good. I enjoyed the video.
Sup, cup.
Did you guys notice that this thing is...
You
That was
haven't
interesting.
said a single coherent thought all day, brother. What is you talking about?
It's because you're not listening to what I'm saying, bruh.
Been a
I'm
hard
saying some
time
real
recently.
shit.
Thanks
You
for
haven't
streaming
been
and
listening,
making it
you
a little
fucking
better.
moron.
xQcl.
You're an idiot. You're an idiot. Okay. Then let me give you a better analogy then. I will put my key in front of the house and with a sign that says, "This is the key to the house." And then some guy is gonna walk into the house and I'm gonna say, "Man, fucking Russia, man. Man, fucking Russia, China, BlackRock, fucking man, fuck shit. Fucking Russia, I swear to God, man. How could they be doing this to me, dude? I can't believe it, man.
Robbed by some cyber loser lol.
Like, they just do it every time, dude. This is ridiculous, chat. Can you believe
great
that?
To see you develop over the years seems like you are in the best mental part of your life so far. Glad things are going well. xQcl.
Oh, something. Okay, here it comes. Yo, this is X on the beat, yo. Okay. Wait, my voice as well. That is. Anyone knows that boy? I don't know, he's just so soy. Anyone knows that boy? I don't know, he's just so soy. Again, that was pretty
good.
cool.